Okay, so we're going to start our panel. Okay, it's over to you. Let's announce all of the panelists and yeah, what you're doing, and also about the panel discussion.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. So am I on? Check, mic, check. It's gone. It's on, but not.
Did it just die?
I think so. Oh,
It's all your magnetic power.
that's good. Okay, that's good. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our conversation about the future of fashion. I've got some awesome panelists here with me, and I'll let you guys do mini introductions. But we've got Beata here, who's a strategist and researcher pioneering the future of digital, inclusive and sustainable fashion, and has over 15 years of experience working in tech and art. And you have established unfolding strategies in 2021. Could you tell us a little bit more about your business and what you do?
First of all, thank you for having me here. It's great to meet you all. Unfolding Strategies is a consultancy and education lab for fashion and Web3. I founded Unfolding Strategies after working a lot in academia with the topics around digitization, technology, and sustainability, and I felt, it's very limiting, and I think what's happening within academia shouldn't be separate from what is happening within the industry, and was a particularly the time when industry really needed that knowledge. That's why I also joined Dematerialize NFT marketplace, doing their impact strategy and helping with partnerships. So with Unfolding, we work with various clients and organizations, ranging from fashion brands, but also tech companies and blockchain companies, focusing specifically on fashion on various projects. And we also do a lot of public-facing initiatives. We do a podcast, which is called Fashion Knowledge. We publish free reports, so we're very interested in also opening up and decentralizing education.
Amazing. And you're also currently finalizing your PhD, is that right?
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yes, hopefully this year it will be done. It's about decentralization and fashion knowledge. So yeah, that hopefully this year. So everybody, please.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And then we have Simone Berry. Simone is a pioneering figure in the intersection of crypto, fashion, and culture, with over a decade of experience leading global fashion brands to over 200 million, which she humbly stated earlier was not that big of a deal.
In comparison to their larger business, it's actually not.
Not by default. You also co-founded the award-winning People of Crypto business, so we'd love to hear a little bit more about that and what you're doing. Yeah. 2 awards.
Metaverse awards. So People of Crypto is an innovation and creative studio focused on cultural storytelling, bringing Web2 brands into Web3 in a meaningful way. Our mission is really to increase representation within marginalized groups, LGBTQAI, Black and Brown, disabled within Metaverse. So right now, our phase 1 of our company is very gamification, Metaverse. We believe it's the strongest tool to be able to onboard, which is where wearables come in, digital fashion. When you look at skins in a Web2 world, it's the way that drives their largest point. Fortnite makes more than Amazon daily. It's a free-to-play model, but it represents their entire revenue. So when you're looking at that, that's something that we recognized that it was an easy onboarding tool to use, and so we focused within the Metaverse.
Amazing. I also understand that you were named one of Vogue's Business 100 of the year, so a lot of accolades on my notes.
It was a busy year. We brought pride into the Metaverse, so we were able to onboard the first beauty brand. So it was L'Oreal and NYX. No beauty brands at that point had really entered. They did it, I think, actually, I shouldn't say that. One other one did with an avatar program, but we had created pride within the Metaverse. We created an entire game, and then we did a non-binary collection that had all their makeup looks. It was also the first collection that represented prosthetics, so it went across the board. It was 36 different skin shades, and I'm truly grateful that they acknowledged what we were creating.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And then we also have Marco here, and Marco is a computer programmer and investor with over 20 years of experience in immersive technologies and AI, has worked in academia across big tech and production studios across Europe and US. You're now a CTO at Fabricant, that's correct? Could you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, CTO of the Fabricant. The Fabricant is the digital fashion house based in Amsterdam that basically started the Web3 fashion revolution, let's say, because back in 2019 they mint actually the founders. I was just a big fan of the Fabricant at the time. They minted the first digital fashion item in Ethereum. At the time it was the value $10,000. It was quite a lot. And I think it was 50 ETH. It was quite make a lot of sensation. Since then, we work on a lot of brands, and we are building a platform where people can co-create, trade, and wear their digital items. We strongly believe on the co-creation for digital fashion and on the old digital fashion proposition for sure.
All right, thank you. Well, good to have you all here. I'm going to dive into some of the questions that we have to cover. So I'm going to start off with you, Marco. How do you think Web3 technologies actually enhance customer engagement and personalization, specifically in the fashion and retail industry? But also, why should people care about it, and why should we be embracing it?
I think technology, one of the things that excite me a lot is the composability of things. So it's actually something that has not been used to a lot. There's been a few examples. For example, doodles made on floor, the wearables, or us as well. We started using composition of materials and garments to do kind of more kind of interesting co-creation, representation of what people want to do. I think that's one of the most exciting stuff. Right now there is a standard, the 6551, where basically NFT can become a wallet, and you can use that one to actually compose and create, I don't know, for example, a kit of wearables with just one NFT. All these things, they are gonna be embraced by a larger audience. Think about gamers. Gamers love to have a backpack and kit of items. And this one is still super early, but that's what excites me mostly, because it's not explored yet, and they are coming now. And just because in Ethereum finally there is a standard on Flow. Flow has been started like that from the beginning. It actually was the reason why they create the blockchain, because to have that kind of design patterns different from Ethereum. So I'm super happy that there are these technology that can really unlock a lot of potential for the user. So I think the future is gaming a lot, still really, really early. There is a lot of, let's say, kind of, they are dubious about that at the moment. They're really gaming company are still like, okay, let's see where it goes, but there are a lot of potential. Really excited, for example, there is a, now I hear about Diablo 4 with Charlie Cohen collaboration coming this summer. I think there are a lot of good signal from the big industry, the gaming industry, yeah.
Do either of you have anything to add just around?
I mean, obviously I'm going to be, yes, gaming. I think what's great about it is we're always talking about what's the value in Web3. When you're looking at gaming, it's immediate satisfaction. You have the wearable, you're now playing the game. Ready Player Me is a great avatar system that you can wear across like 1,300 different games. So now you're feeling a level of interruptibility. And you're already doing it in Web2. So we were talking early on the panel, when the technology is not visible, when you don't have to think about it, when it's not a huge part of the conversation, it's just what you're doing. And gaming allows that seamless, at times, flow into, okay, I have an NFT, now I'm immediately using it. And we all like immediate satisfaction, let's just be honest. No one wants to hear, in the future, we want to do something now with it.
Yeah, and maybe to add a little bit to, you said, why should we care? I think because we don't really have choice. And so regardless if you're fond of anything that's covered under the big umbrella term digital innovation, fashion is said always to manifest the zeitgeist and go with spirit of times and also experiment with certain things. So looking at it from like societal and cultural perspective, this is basically what's happening. It's obviously still very early and there are a lot of attempts. Obviously fashion industry is also a lot, about monetization, creating new products. So it's a very exciting moment when certain new business models and new value propositions are being created. So I think we don't really have, I don't think it's a choice really.
This is kind of an open one for everyone. From your various experiences, are there any key barriers or obstacles that you think businesses are facing when it comes to adopting Web3 tech?
May I quickly start with? I would say it's digital literacy. No one not really knowing what they're talking about, not understanding key terms, and not thinking also how does it fit on one hand their capacity, what they want to achieve, and also how it sits with the brand's culture, the brand's heritage, the brand narrative. So I think it's very important to learn, understand, and also think how each brand can partake and do it in this landscape. And possibly not only thinking about it as a marketing one-off thing, and it was mentioned today here on different panels before, but also think from more like a top perspective. How does it fit in the bigger picture if we are introducing new products, if we are having a more diversified portfolio? What does it mean that we sell digital products or give them for free, for example, as we saw at the event 2 days ago? So I think this is all these are big questions, but I think, yeah, first digital literacy, and second looking just beyond one-off marketing gig, which are also great because they allow to experiment and learn and grow, and now we have all those amazing things to look at and think like what works, what doesn't. But yeah, I would say these are those two for me.
I think it's also the fact that the fashion industry in general, the traditional fashion industry, is very slow to move. They're very slow to innovate. I think we've been having a sustainability conversation for over 20 years. I think they just started adapting to it. So it's also the structure of a way a fashion brand works. You have all these different layers. Now you're going to say, well, where does this actually intersect? So most companies just started creating 3D rendering. So you're looking at the educational system. They're not being taught that layer technology. So how does that affect the designers that are coming in? It comes from all parts of it. I think we have a Web3 conversation of them even understanding what it is. But then how do you actually change your entire business model to reflect that back? So why it is a function of marketing, it's the easiest way to adapt to it and test and learn, because it is a fundamental movement. I think there's all the areas like transparency in supply chain. How do I now take an entire factory base, so if we look at what I did, 1,000 different factories all over the world and invest in putting them all on chain? It's a substantial lift without it really being understood. So I think there's two areas where it's a system problem, and then honestly, it's us problem. We're not creating it so it's seamless. We're not giving them the tools to be able to just adapt. So they are using it as a marketing mechanism, because when you say, I'm going to give up physical clothing to sell digital, and your customer is like, okay, well, where am I wearing it? What am I doing? And it's being worked on. So body mapping, it's getting a lot better, obviously AR, VR, but we don't give them the immediate satisfaction. So that's on us just to work on the tools. At the same time, it's changing their mindset. It's educating that a physical item and a digital item are valuable. And right now, we're not showing the value in a digital item.
Technology, of course. I think it's too visible, and Web3 really too visible. Like talking about technology, it doesn't make any sense for a fashion industry. Why they should? It kind of reminds me when the first electric cars appear. Right? Electric cars say, you're gonna save the planet if you buy an electric car. By just 10 times slower, you need to recharge every half an hour. It's not even good. Like, it doesn't look nice either. They're ugly. But you say, yeah, okay, but maybe someday it's gonna be better. And now it takes really decades to go into, oh wow, actually I prefer an electric car than a diesel because it looks actually cooler and it's actually more performant. I think we are in the decades ago situation yet.
So there's this chat, innovators, early adopters, a chasm. next than everyone else. So I think we're somewhere here, and maybe our chasm goes down a little bit even for early adopters, but it's this space that we need to solve for, because this person up here is like, why? But why do I need it? Like I hear everyone keeps mentioning like the Starbucks because they have a reward system. They have a physical reward system. Why? And that's the question that I think when there's a why in sustainability, that's a value, that's something that we can share, but we don't ask the why enough. What does blockchain solve that they can't get in the physical world? What's that why? Because rewards they can get.
Do you think we have the answers to that question in the fashion industry? Like, what is the why? Why, you know, as we were talking about previously.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. What is the why? Why?
The wallet is a CRM. It's the best retention tool. You're getting rid of the intermediary. You're getting rid of a very large line in your expenses, because right now most brands, nearly all larger brands, have to use Google or Facebook. It's a part of their business, or they're not going to be able to move through marketplaces. So smaller brands are already being kind of pushed to the side because they don't have the same amount of budgets to work. But when you look at your wallet, and this is like the future, you can see what everyone buys, what everyone does, how people act and monetize and move through it. That's direct to your consumer. You're building community, and you don't need it through anyone else's eyes. And that understanding to me is extremely powerful, and why brands they understand that. So if we move to a wallet system, similar to what happened with Instagram, everyone's like, no one's going to shop off it. It's their largest model right now. Our wallets are going to be able to show brands how to connect with us. And that's the massive change. Like, to me, Web3 is a bottom up, because you're communicating, you're collaborating, you're creating together, versus a top down, which is what fashion is now. We're going to give you this, and we're going to sell, 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 sell. Now your consumer is going to be like, I like this. And that fundamentally changes the way that we're going to participate with our community, not our consumers.
And
I would like to add something. I think there are many different whys. And for example, we can also predict certain things not only by speculating, and in fashion design, we always have a designer or a company. Now it's a little bit different, for example, with Shane using AI. It's a very good predictive tool what to produce and sell, as we've seen with their numbers, not maybe the great impact. But there are many different whys, and for example, in automated industry and, you know, in our future cars, there are people being hired who are, for example, future anthropologists. And they just ask people, they work with them, and they say, how do you imagine that? How would you behave? They create certain conditions. This is also seen in gaming. For example, there are particular people, I don't know, brought in, for example, professor of economics and law, who are developing the rule of governance and thinking how people are going to behave. In digital fashion, because it's linked to fashion, we don't really have this kind of conversation. So, for example, this is a great perspective from a brand, but why the people, the community, or using old language consumers, why they will want that, need that, desire that, partake and participate, apart from those that we already see that we're interested, so like crypto natives, potentially gamers, some of them. This is yet not to be studied. And what is fundamental is that we've seen digital fashion happen before. This is not very new. For example, in Second Life, there were microeconomies, there were fascinating spaces. In gaming, if you watch, I don't know, even if you play Cyberpunk, the fashion as it is there, it's like on a very fantastic level. So these are not super, super new things. They've been slowly developing, and then the way, for example, how it was envisioned by Fabricant, they got this amazing huge traction, so it's a time of establishing that. But I think nobody's really asking people how they envision that and how they feel about it, because in fashion is always kind of top-down. So I also think this would be interesting to bring certain methods that are widely used in different creative industries or design categories and verticals.
I love
For
that.
example, the co-creation process is something that not all brands like adopt and see as exciting, because they say, oh wow, our IP is under attack, because we don't want that what we do is actually share in terms of IP with someone else, even if they are our customers. It's really like we are really early on that, as much as we think it's super powerful. we understand that not everyone will be like, oh wow, let's go ahead for that. It needs time. It needs time and a sense of ownership of things, the decentralization as well. As much as super powerful because you can track your items. Not all the brands see that potential as an immediate kind of advantage, let's say.
And digital fashion, digital identity, when you're looking at Alpha and Gen Z, they already value their digital identity as much as their physical identity. So I do think that one of the reasons why brands are always leaning towards metaverse or gaming, wearables, yes, is because they recognize that there's an entire demographic that is being raised fully digital. So as you move up, millennial, X, the rest, they're not ready for that, but these two they're already living it. And the reality is, if they have a physical item, they want the digital twin. So there are use cases already being proven that it does work. The question is now, how do we slowly stop with all the physical, that the digital can be almost representative? And that comes from just the growth of technology.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the topics that we were talking about as well that's further down, but I think it's a good time to talk about, is how do we start shifting that perception and getting people to see the value in their digital versus, real life tangible product. We were talking about phygital, let's get phygital. Like, how do we do that? Are there any examples or experiences that any of you have had, or any advice or actionable recommendations you can provide?
I like the use of phygital. Oh God! Every time
I hate that word.
I need to mention it.
It's the worst word.
It's because there are many use cases that are interesting. For example, that one related to networking. I love the 90cc example of Simone, for example. That is like building really a solid proposition about to connect people. So you use physical items connected with a digital infrastructure and this central infrastructure like the blockchain to connect people for real in real life. I think post-COVID is a super powerful concept because really we spent 2 years literally separated each other. Now there are people like him and all other examples, like for example even this one, NFC with Charlie Cohen. And you connect physical items with the digital space, but also you can connect each other in that way. And that's a really interesting concept because it merges two worlds, but also merge people and connect people together in the same way. And networking, social networking, there is a lot of talk about how it's going to be in Web3. It's still I think it's not clear yet, but these are the few first examples that really excite me a lot because there is a novelty and yeah.
I love the way you reframe digital because I think we always have the conversation that it's a wearable and it doesn't necessarily need, like the NFC chip, when you're scanning it, you now have connection, to your point, social sharing. You can connect, maybe eventually there would be a wearable, but it's a different mechanism of connection. I also love when you're looking at how it expands, and I fully forgot what I was going to say, it fully fell out of my head. But with the NFC chip, oh, now I remembered. So Prada is doing authentication. I think a lot of times we want all the sexy stuff, like the good stuff, instead of like the things that we can do. Supply, transparency. These are the solutions, like probably the low-hanging fruit that brands can come into. So they're testing right now to be able to authenticate, I can't say it with my accent, their products. So there is an NFC, you scan, you go through the process. I believe they have their blockchain, so there's 4 other brands, luxury brands that have created their blockchain. And you add, thank you, Aura blockchain. And you can now scan, so when you save it or when you sell it, the person can know this is 100% yes. Now the item has its own tracking system. So it's going to go through, and when you're looking at counterfeit, and when you're looking at how do we continue the resale market, and I think this is actually where luxury brands are most excited to be able to control that market because they're losing billions. And these are the easy solutions that Web3 and blockchain create. I don't think it always has to be about the digital wearable or that, I'm not saying the fidgetal word, the fidgetal can be digital through NFCs. I mean, QR codes were the first iteration, but I think the NFC chip is going to just drive a whole new conversation.
Yeah, I would also add to that. I personally love the word phygital because I think this is how we live. This is like, the fact that I'm all the time checking my phone and I'm here and there. I don't think we live anymore within this divide between RL and URL. I think we're past that, but we still like to think that there is this line. I think that we're very much in between, so whatever word expresses that, that's okay. And I think, yeah, apart from authentication, I think also with the new regulations, at least in EU, around digital IDs and being truthful and factual about the products and their origins and transparency. For example, companies like Eon are putting garments on chain, for example, I don't know, with Nanushka and many, many others. So this not only creates this potential to be okay with the regulations and just, state those mandatory facts and say this is real, this is authentic, this is original, this is sustainable, but also it's a very interesting space for storytelling and narratives and weaving that in. So I think all that we will see in next years, all those things that were happening. On one hand, those like blockchain applications that have been discussed for many, many years, all those things that we call metaverse activations, like it would be very interesting to see them come together, because from my experience, when we had calls with brands that dematerialize, very often people were confusing NFTs with blockchain for transparency, and they were like, is it the same? So it was very inspiring because it showed, one, digital literacy, not much understanding. That's okay, it's all new stuff. But on the other hand, we started thinking how we can introduce that both in the product description and later potentially in smart contracts, how to provide transparency. And I designed a real transparency standard for Dematerialize, where we just disclose certain information on who, where, when, and with what tools, because not many people know how to do all those things, like Fabricant, they know. But for many people, it's still very mysterious, and it should be also open and more simplified if we want to bring in people and democratize and decentralize. So I think now, I hope there will be more initiatives like that cooking up.
Yeah, and I think really interesting is the idea of sustainability in Web3. This is kind of what we're here to talk about. So I think, Beata, you could probably offer up some insight about how do you do sustainability in Web3? How does that work, and who does it benefit?
Oh my God, okay. Okay, no, so yeah, I was probably the second person to have a job which was like head of impact. There was only a dress X in terms of like fashion and sustainability. What does that even mean? So it was fantastic to get this role and do it for over a year and to actually think what does it entail? And I think what is important is to think that there are different definitions of digital sustainability, but when we think about it, that is not one-sided situation. Very often it's defined as digital tools that can support sustainable innovation and certain ESGs. That's great, but there's also another side to it, and for that we need to also think, how does it add to current companies' CSR practices? Because if you're introducing a new product, you should also include it in your carbon calculations, in your assessments, and your reporting, as you do with T-shirts or leather goods that you're selling. I would say that's one thing. But something that I also see, it's this kind of almost fixation on certain data and facts on how virtual-only fashion is more sustainable than physical. And I always think it's very limiting for the virtual product, because of course, if you have a diversified portfolio of products, and some of them are virtual only, and some of them are fur coat, of course their carbon footprints will be different. And then you can say we have products that have higher and lower. Fair enough. Then you can say it will lower companies' overall numbers, and it's great. But I think it's very reductionist to compare digital product that it's still kind of in a development, what it can do, what it can be with a T-shirt, which we know very well what it does and what is it for and what does it, can signify. It's more of a question, what does fashion do in society? So that's another thing. And the last I would say is thinking also about sustainability, not from this reduced definition of environmental sustainability that we usually associate with, but also thinking about social sustainability. So who does it represent? How it's being made. Tech has a massive also work issues and labor issues. So this is something that I think is important to disclose who did what. In fashion, we have Fashion Revolution, and who says, who made my clothes? The same can be applied to any digital assets. Who made my digital assets? We can very easily imagine digital sweatshops being created. And then also cultural sustainability is super important. So yeah, but maybe cultural sustainability, maybe, I don't know, you want to add on that note?
I think the challenge is, so we brought the CFDA into the metaverse for the first time. We created NFTs for Coach, Tommy, Carolina Herrera, several other brands. And the first thing they said, the blockchain is not sustainable. How are we going to address that? Because they have physical sustainability. It's all part of their messaging. Blockchains aren't sustainable. NFTs are not sustainable. So it's all also that conversation. So we put it on Polygon. Polygon is probably one of up there with the three, and they have carbon footprint offsets. So they do all the things to be able to kind of balance it. They're trying to get to carbon neutral, I believe, in the next 2 years. But I think it's a true concern because consumers also believe, and to all of our points, it's misunderstanding the lack of education. They probably know that the blockchain is not the greatest, but they probably don't know that we fill 2.5 Empire State Buildings a day of textile waste. So you get, every now and then we see those lovely pictures of like somewhere in Bangladesh where everything is like destroyed and full. They don't get that that's us sending it there. So the lack of understanding, fast fashion, we need to be more sustainable. Shein is growing at a level 500%. So there is something lost in the communication, and maybe if we can change mindsets, because this is what I really do think it is, it's a fundamental change on how we look at value. If we can put value on a digital item, because by nature, humans want to feel like I have this. And the flex to them is, why do we buy fashion? It's part of our identity. It's the way that we show up. We need to be able to do that for the digital side, and I do think technology is moving in that direction. But we have to have some type of understanding with the physical that we are literally killing our planet. And what the blockchains and what they're focusing on, it's not. So again, with the layers of education and education, because a lot of times consumers just come to us like, it's not sustainable. But you'll go buy something at Shein.
And I think, yeah, the one thing that's also very crucial always in these conversations, which blockchain, why this blockchain, is this proof of work, is it proof of stake? There are now amazing reports that didn't exist 2 years ago. So it's also, there's like factual data that supports that. So I think it's also up to brands to be responsible and, you know, make their choices, or make the, you know, companies and partners they have, help them make those choices with them.
Transparency.
We need to say that even the greenest blockchain is less sustainable than a centralized centralized technology like, I don't know, AWS, any cloud service. They are so optimized for performance and be sustainable that no blockchain can compete on that, because a blockchain is based on decentralization, if it is, and in that sense, of course, is going to consume way more power than a normal centralized. So there is a trade-off, of course, because the blockchain, let's say the big advantage is, of course, decentralization, is about the distribution, and it makes sense to fight for that, but in order to also fight against the fast fashion, anything that really is killing our planet, because I think the data are just 30% of what is produced now is actually work.
Yeah, it goes right into the landfill.
Just insane. 30% is literally. So we really like sustain an industry that, yes, it's cool. I love physical fashion, but it cannot work in this way forever for the future. So yeah.
So it's not being worn, and then we're not even taking the manufacturers into standpoint. So there's samples that never get worn, the ends and the fabric that don't get done, the rolls and rolls. Like the entire system is built for waste.
Yeah. There is a lot of innovation there. There's actually cool. A lot of startups working on reducing the sampling, reducing all the design process, and that's actually good. Always. We keep an eye on that, because, you know, you can say we want digital fashion is more sustainable, but what we want to also be sure that physical fashion, what is doing, because there are a lot of new things, new materials, anything is moving forward, but it's not enough. That's the point.
The 3D models have helped a lot with the sampling.
Because maybe it's also a question differentiating between digitalization and fashion on the whole, and digital fashion as, for example, new products that certain companies are trying to sell. And then with digitalization, we have parametric design has always been in fashion. It's been there for a long time, but probably now it's more and more active. Virtual prototyping. If there's something that really makes fashion industry more sustainable, this is virtual sampling in fashion on a larger scale. So many companies, big companies, many activewear companies are actually doing that because it's a win-win situation. You save money, you save time, and you're also you're also more sustainable. So this is the kind of ultimate goal.
And Simone, how would you suggest new businesses, startups that are working in fashion right now, how would you propose that they go about, embracing and taking on some of these Web3 technologies? They're novices, they have no idea where to begin. What would be your recommendation for starting point and, getting through the process?
So I look at where we are right now in the ecosystem like the modem. So at a certain point, it kind of rolled. There was one email, I believe it was AOL, and no one knew what was coming. We have a lot of internal conversations. We live in like an echo chamber of talking about all the things. I think we need to acknowledge that we don't exactly know what's coming because we're creating use cases as we're moving through. And that's what's amazing about it. It's what, honestly, I'm drawn to. So it's almost like when you're talking to the brands, what is it you want to create? Like, let's take a step back and recognize that this is brand new. Larger companies are going to be able to have the revenue and the dollars to be able to invest in it. They have a long-term, they have a whole runway of understanding these are the phases. Smaller brands don't. But what they do have is communities. And so now when you've removed this intermediary and you're creating direct with your community, you've seen like the increase of merchandise brands, merch brands. So everyone is a brand now, and they have a clothing brand. It's the same kind of ideology. You now have a community. What does your community want? And through a smart contract, unfortunately they're trying to get rid of it, but creators' royalties, that's real. So now that you can participate and collaborate with your community, that changes the game. I think there's a lot of tools. I'm working with Farfetch and we're mentoring a few companies that are trying to build that middle path. Because it's not easy for a brand, and I wish I had a great answer, but I don't really have a great answer for this one, because we still need that whole. Like, there's steps. They don't know how to create smart contracts. They may not have the skills. Mid-journey, honestly, we can go back and forth, but AI is really going to assist in filling some of these holes. I have a dear friend that was a stylist. She's now fully transferred into digital fashion. She just won an award through the Institute of Digital Fashion. She's going to be selling her collection on Revolve. I think they're giving it away for regulatory reasons, but that would never have happened without AI. So as technology moves, how are we ensuring, and this also comes back to my earlier panel, accessibility to smaller brands that may not have that same access as a larger brand because they don't have full teams? How are we creating tools to solve their problems, not just the larger brands? And part of the smart contracts and part of a lot of things people are trying to solve is that medium piece.
Marco, what would you say if you were to make any recommendations to a startup who doesn't want to get left behind and wants to take advantage of Web3 and doesn't know where to begin?
I would say differentiate, because there are many opportunities, but most of companies are really shooting in the same direction. Actually, all directions, but actually the same direction, because that's a bit of the things happening. I will say stay focused as well, because focus is the most important. I see too many companies. I'm mentoring companies as well, startups, and the first advice is focus on one thing, doing really well, and that's it. Don't go into I do this. We do metaverse, but we do AI plus blockchain, multi-chain.
Are they raising? Because that's when everyone does everything. I'm in AI now.
Exactly. So there are many. I think is that just the most important thing. Web3, there is a lot of space for innovation, a lot of space for really making things new and better. But the lack of the focus and can be differentiated because there are so many people in every single area. I think is the most important thing because there is, even if now probably the market looks like a beer as well, but actually there are a lot of things happening under the hood. There are a lot of big companies that are working under the hood. Metaverse, everyone says, metaverse died. Apple, we don't know what's happening on Monday. Nvidia became the 5th biggest company in the world, and every week is launching new things. Meta announced a new VR headset that looks fantastic. I don't think it's that. I think it's a sleeping of maybe hibernate like this environment is a bit cold here in this meeting room. But it's definitely is there. Definitely there are a lot of opportunities.
I agree.
And Beata?
Yeah, I would say that's exactly what I meant, that this is just pretty much going with the spirit of the times and embracing it, and there's no avoiding that in a way. But I would say two things that kind of create a paradox, are a bit contradictory. So first of all, I'm sorry to say, learn what you're dealing with and have someone on your team understanding it. The fact that they're Gen Z not gonna mean that they're gonna be amazing at it. So try to at least have a basic understanding what you're heading towards to, or have someone that you trust with it. And then also think, how is your brand, if you're a brand, relevant to that space, but also what are you associated with? Because I've seen, for example, I don't know, heritage luxury Italian brands, I don't mean Gucci now, by no means, doing things that look like Blade Runner when actually that doesn't really make sense for them. So where's your brand legacy? Why suddenly you're doing that? You know what, it has to do one with another because you want to be futuristic, sci-fi-ish, so then you're kind of replicating that thing. And you have so much to offer, aesthetically, culturally. You have those people that have been following you, buying your things, having a relationship with your products. So I think also for design teams within companies, if you give them this opportunity, it would be great to also introduce someone who knows a little bit about 3D design, because I've seen designers who have many years of experience acting like they're first-year fashion students and being like, ooh, we can make a bag that doesn't exist in real world, so we're gonna make it out of metal chains because it would be so heavy. I think those literally one-to-one parameters, or that everything is on fire. I think this was we all collectively since 2019 went through this, group exercises in creativity. And I think now many of the things we can move back. And I think now brands can start bringing and putting on the table those things that they're amazing at. So creating beautiful, new, exciting things. And I think that should be also integrated. So on one hand, knowing what you're dealing with, but on the other, knowing who you are and what are you putting on the table and how you can make this your unique thing.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting that you can have brand extensions without investing in that one category. So I think as an extension, maybe you don't have footwear, but you would like to do that. Maybe you don't have jewelry. Jewelry is a great use case that can immediately be used. I can be on a Zoom now and have earrings. I can have jewelry on, so that's a very low-hanging fruit. Footwear also, you can use the AR filters through IG. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, how can we move through? I like setting things on fire when we do digital, because I personally think that brands should have a little bit of fun with it. There's something to the marketing, but it was really interesting when we were doing the CFDA. I really thought they would want to move beyond what they already had done. Every single person, every brand recreated one of their physical items. Even though we were pushing you could do this, it could go from red to green, it can move through, it can shift. Everyone, here's this dress, it went down a runway, create it like this. What was different was the environment. So we were able to create very elaborate and interesting environments that they wouldn't be able to present it previously. So I think the Michael Kors, it was on a silver mannequin and it was walking across the water into a boat, where obviously it just walked down the runway. But that's where they were really looking at it from a marketing perspective. What does that mean?
Yeah, there was the AI fashion context. There was a couple of months ago, I think, and it was interesting because they decided that every participant had to present just a runway. So.
That's what my friend won.
Yeah, because that's because it was cool because really the concept of runaway day is so classic and traditional. It was completely interpreted in a completely different
Incredible
ways.
what they did.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing, and that's the power of creativity. Like when you don't have the boundaries of physical space. Because I mean, that kind of set only Balenciaga probably can afford to do that.
Yeah.
In a real space.
But what's going to be interesting is that it's going to be seen on Revolve. So the collection that went will be on Revolve.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be another great use case. And again, we're in the modem. Everything is a new use case. And that's all, it's constantly just moving forward.
Thank you all very much. There's so many more questions I would love to ask, but I can see we are at
He's like, get up and go.
Already.
We are a little over time.
We're over
So it's been a fantastic panel, and thank you so much for all joining in on this. A big round of applause to our panelists. The final of the day. So next up, we got Dr. Alberto